Yo, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Crazy Out Kane, sugarcane.com, CACTV. I'm doing a new series called the BMX HipHop Chronicles, where I kick it with people who have a BMX background and a hip-hop background, people who have contributed to BMX but also have hip-hop in their DNA, people who contributed to hip-hop but also have BMX in their DNA, just the combination of the two. So for my very first guest, I wanted to kick it off right and get my dude Jimmy Mack of Bulldog Bikes Worldwide. Jimmy Mack is one of the pioneers of bridging the gap between the hip-hop and BMX cultures. He brought the whole thing together with his brand Bulldog Bikes Worldwide and show how they're all interconnected. So sit back, grab some popcorn, nice little drink, and check out this interview with Jimmy Mack. It's very informative. You get to find out a lot of things you might not know about Jimmy Mack, the Bulldog movement, his whole history in the music industry, and also as a biathlete. We're gonna get into that right now, and this is the BMX HipHop Chronicles. Jimmy Mack representing right now. Jimmy Mack, say what's up to the people.
What's up, Al? What's going on? What's up, all the people in the webland? What's going on?
You know, you have a vast history in BMX, and you know, you were one of the guys who really held the torch for BMX and hip hop, also punk rock as well, and representing the whole New York BMX scene. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about what got you into BMX and some of your history.
Well, I go back to the early 80s, Al. I grew up in South Jersey, from Philly. Moved to South Jersey when I was like 5, and got exposed to a whole nother world. It was like the suburbs. Grew up in a place called Williamstown. Was highly exposed to skateboarding and BMX at a young age, and really had a love for it. And then, you know, I was exposed to, when I was in Philly, I was exposed to all the urban stuff. But when I got to South Jersey, I got exposed to all the suburban stuff. And, you know, I did both. You know, I played basketball, you know, I played soccer, you know, I skateboard. I did BMX at a young age. And then in about 4th grade, a kid brought in a magazine called BMX Action, which people should remember, the OGs should remember.
Mm-hmm.
And it really hit me. Like the magazine, I read the magazine, and the next thing I knew, I was asking around. I saw they had these tracks, and we found a track actually in Deptford, New Jersey, which was ABA at the time, probably around 84 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I begged my father to let me do it. He was like, you got to train for it. So for about 2 years, he would take me to the track on the weekends with one of my buddies, and I would just train like 2 years. You know, I was dying to race. And eventually in probably around 85, 86, I was able to race, and that was it. My love for competing in BMX was there, and, you know, I was introduced to freestyle because some of the other guys, you know, time off area would be freestyling. So, you know, I got into freestyle, I was racing, and then, you know, that's when the love began. And then I started a team with this bike shop called Pro Pedals. I was only, I think, 13 at the time, and got a whole bunch of sponsors. My family had a motorhome, and we started showing up at regionals and double points, and, you know, any national that was close. And it's funny, I reconnected with Thomas Donahue and a lot of the legends at Deptford that actually raced on my team. And that's where it began. And then, yeah, man, like, you know, we did good. And then I got hurt. And I actually damaged my kidney at one nationals in 1987, Liberty Nationals. And I got hit by the back of the pack when I was in 1st place. And it took me out. And my parents were like, you're forbidden to do BMX.
Damn.
And, you know, it was bad. Like, you know, obviously it was my kidney. I split my lip open. You know, it was pretty bad. But I stopped talking to my parents, and I swear that I would come back into the sport when I could,
Right, right.
So it kind of took over destiny because that passion that I had for BMX, like I had to sneak it after that when I was doing freestyle flatland and, when my parents weren't around. But, you know, the love of racing and being on dirt, was everything to me.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I had to bury those things, besides doing freestyle stuff on the low. And I just love to race. So I had just entered into high school, and I didn't, from playing soccer and running and biking, I didn't know that I was a great runner. And so I started winning all these mile. I used to run the mile and 2 mile.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a form for biathlon, which was just a new sport, in around 86, 87. And I begged my father because I was like, I just want to race. I just want to break through something.
Mm-hmm.
And he let me do it. And then that's how all the sponsorship stuff really started kicking off. And, I became nationally ranked and world ranked in that, and rode for some of the biggest companies in the world at the age of 16. And but all the
Hey, real,
time,
real, real quick now, biathlon. That's what sports is that? Is biathlon? What two
as
sports?
running and biking. Now they call it duathlons,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a sister sport to triathlon.
Right, right.
Same culture, same people almost, basically. One's swimming and one is not swimming.
All right, so you was doing road cycling along with running.
Yeah, correct.
All right,
And I
dope,
was
dope.
one of the top. And it was during the time of Lance was doing it, and I would race against Lance. Like, we were the younger guys in that sport.
Mm-hmm.
But, I got to get to a highest level of riding for Team Avia with Kenny Souza, Joel Thompson, Terry Martin. I got to work with, where I learned how to design, I got to work with Boone Lennon at Scott USA, who's actually the father of the aerodynamic handlebars. And was one of first 5 people at Scott USA with Greg LeMond and some other triathletes to ride that product. And then it just like kind of exploded. SRAM picked me up. I was one of the first 10 athletes at SRAM, which is grip shift.
Mm-hmm.
And but all that time I was doing that and blowing up in that sport, I thought of BMX. It was like the lost girlfriend I could not break up with,
Right, right.
And so it kind of comes full circle because as I retired at 19 from the biathlons or whatever, because in the off season, it all makes sense in the end when I'm telling the story. But in the off season, hip hop was huge when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the hip hop bug. And I started some groups during the off season.
Mm-hmm.
So does that make sense? Like, I was doing everything else, during the spring and summer, but in the off season, I was working with groups. I was, trying to get them shows locally, all that kind of stuff. So I became popular local and regional in Philadelphia for working with music or acts or whatever in hip hop, and had a passion for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I graduated high school, I had the experience from the BMX, the high level sponsorship on the biathlons, and also I had so much sponsorship and being one of the only African American kids in that sport, basically. All the pros were asking, like, how are you getting all these sponsors? And I started representing. I said, well, I could represent you. And I would go to Interbike and network off my sponsors and get these other guys sponsorship deals. And then I would, 9 times out of 10, it wasn't big money, but I might get them $3,000 worth of bikes, and I would charge 20% of the retail cost of those bikes, or gear companies or whatever, shoe companies or whatever they got. And that's how I would get paid. And I got really good at it. And At the same time, I got in this program while I was in high school called NIFTY, National Foundation for Teaching Entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a program that taught inner city kids how to run a business. So I'd already started, but it really taught me the nuts and bolts. It was like almost going to a grad school, but it was teaching you in a nuts and bolts kind of way that anybody could learn. It was an amazing curriculum. So, you know,
it's still around?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest social entrepreneurship foundations in the world now. And part of the story circles back to that also. But yeah, I went through this program. I saw, you know, usually it was just me as an entrepreneur. I didn't know any other young people. And I got to meet a whole bunch of people, young people like myself, that had an interest or had started a business. And that was at University of Penn. Through all the different things, they were kind of swirling together, if you know what I'm saying, like the bikes, the music, the entrepreneurship. And so I was kind of evolving. When I retired from the biathlons, my parents had got divorced and I was out of high school. And when my parents, like when they went through this divorce, it was, you know, it was pretty bad. And it was just kind of like, what do I want to do? I felt like I was being held back a little bit because of all the stuff I was doing. I was ready just to spread my wings after high school. And when my parents got divorced, I was like, I'm going to New York. Well, I had made contacts through that, you know, through those winters with all the record labels like Wild Pitch, all the big independents, RCA. You know, like I was getting to know people because I was taking the bus up to New York and bringing demos up from Philly. So I knew people, and then I had gotten a lawyer who, at the time, was at TVT Records when it was more an independent label, like they had 9 Inch Nails. And he was the head of business affairs, but he was a lawyer. And
TVT, who was that? Who are you talking about?
Randy Frisch.
Okay, I don't know. I tried. I actually shopped the project to TVT back in the day. So.
Okay, yeah, Patricia was there. Bernard, not Bernard, the other cat that went on to do some amazing stuff. You know what I'm talking about. The one that has A$AP Ferg and stuff. I can't remember his name offhand. But so I had him in my pocket. And, you know, I had a whole bunch of acts or whatever. And he was shopping it around. So I moved to New York after, you know, the divorce. And I stayed with him for a couple of weeks. Then I found an apartment on 51st between Broadway and 8th, which was like the grace of God. It was a little studio apartment. And that's when everything really started happening. That was July 16th, 1993. And that's when I kind of landed in New York, had my apartment. And then I reconnected with the foundation, the Entrepreneurship Foundation, because it was in New York. And they actually asked me to do a lot of speaking engagements. So I went to a place, now it's called Camp Mariah, but it was called Fresh Air Fund. And I went there to speak, and I met this cat there that worked for a record label and production company called Orpheus Records and Hush Entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
And he was volunteering at Fresh Air Fund. So I had a video of what I did and all the stuff I did, and I talked to the kids. And this guy was like challenging me, like asking me all these questions because he had never heard of me. And I was knocking his questions out left and right. And he was like, yeah, we got to connect. And I was like, cool, you know. And it ended up, when I lived on 51st, his office was on 58th. And then they had, you know, Compton's Most Wanted, Freddie Jackson, Najee, Tanya Blunt. Like they had a whole bunch of, you know, and they had been famous through the 70s and 80s of putting out hundreds of all these like Jamaica funk and, you know, all that Force MDs. They had done a lot. So he brought me in, and then next thing I know, I had an internship there, and then the next thing I knew, I was vice president of the company, and they had a whole bunch of new deals on Polygram, BMG, and Sony. They had deals everywhere. So I would ride my I brought my BMX bike up to New York because I was like, now watch how this links in. So
what was you what was you riding back then? What was you riding back then?
What was I riding? I had a Pro Class, Mongoose Pro Class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it was been a long time, but I had a Pro Class, and then I had one of my road bikes and I had one of my mountain bikes, but I preferred to ride my BMX bike. But that was during the time of, Puff was interning with Dre, Chuck Bone, and all those guys. They were going to Uptown, and it was the fraternity of like Tony Shellman. He started Mecca. All of us were doing music and fashion, but we were just starting. There was a whole bunch of us. And so they would see me ride this BMX bike on 51st to Hush, because it was on Central Park West. And they were like, who's that on the BMX bike? Isn't that guy that works for Hush? They were like, they just didn't get it. I didn't get it. I was just like, whatever. And so that, Joel hooked that up and we became partners, and then they gave us a subsidiary. We had it with Scotty Brothers, and we were there, but I was always, riding my BMX bike. And then I started reconnecting old BMX sponsors with the hip hop when I was at Hush. And so what happened was I got in contact with Scott Dewey, who was a marketing guy at Fox Racing, and in '93. And I was saying this would be a very good look with hip hop right now. And so I was doing consulting stuff with Scott Dewey and product placement, and I gave it to Uptown Records crew, to Puff, to Chuck Bone, Chuck Jr., and all the street teams.
What year was this? Like what? Around
1993.
93. Okay.
Yeah. So that whole motocross thing started because I started placing it on the Uptown Cats and other hip hop people in hip hop way before that Wu-Tang stuff and all that other stuff. We were doing it in '93, and then also working with Leaf Shirus with Oakley. We were in heavy with Oakley doing product placement with him at Oakley. He was like a legendary guy there. And we were putting it on the influencers and artists, but more the influencers, a lot of the A&R, a lot of the producers, were wearing Oakleys way before, that Oakley thing hit with T-Pain. And, so I started that. I started crisscrossing, or I call cross-pollinating the cultures in '93. And, and then that eventually, caught on with Harlem and, all the kids and the motorcycle guys. That was the first, what I call pollination of, kind of how you say, like, I'm a pioneer. So you could say it for the bikes, but there was way more stuff going on in '93, but I saw a vision to put it under so I can make more money and, and put out a lifestyle brand that could appeal, to many people in BMX or action sports and stuff. So that's how all that started. And then we left Hush. I got a label deal on Electro Records. We had a 3-act deal, but none of the acts came out. We went on one tour with the Fugees. It was the Hoodshot tour, and the group was called FTN Click. So we got to go out a little bit, but the records weren't radio friendly. And at the time, it was during the time where they were giving out PD logo deals,
Mm-hmm.
and Sylvia Rome was signing up every hot mini production company. So it's us, All Star, down in Atlanta. There was a couple guys. They were trying to sign up everybody, but when we were done everything, they cut back on everything, and then they didn't want to do, like, our groups were video groups. They were more visual groups. They
Right.
weren't radio.
So
So we left.
real quick, Sylvia Rome, who was she working for at this time?
Electra.
Electra. Okay.
It was a big deal financially for us. So we had some money left after we left, but we couldn't get any of the groups signed.
Mm-hmm.
And, at this time, I've been racing all this time. So that's something I didn't say.
Mm.
So I got back into racing when I moved to New York. When I had the record label, I was racing and stuff. So when I was racing, I was like, I want to do a team. So when we left, one of my interns was best friends with Big L. And he was helping him with Flamboyant. So he used to tell me about these kids and how they would, they're from Harlem, and how they would go to Secaucus and take the subway, the PATH train, and then ride their bikes 7 miles to the track, and then beat kids at the track and come home with all these trophies. So, somehow I wasn't running into them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was racing at Ben Salem, like all over, but not Secaucus for whatever reason, right? I was like, dang, I got to help these guys out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just like, just my, like, brethren, you know what I mean? I was just like, man, they're doing that. Imagine if I can help them.
Right.
So I didn't know who they were or, anything, but one, his name is Poochie, who now is co-owner of Flamboyant with Big L's brother. He was friends with this guy named Will. I think Will, if I'm remembering correctly, who eventually went to the Rough Riders, which I'll connect all this stuff together. He was friends with him, so I was like, find these guys and bring them to my office. And at the time, we were kind of balling. We were at 42nd and 8th, and we had a nice little office where the Dwayne Reed is at. You know what I'm talking about, right on the corner of 42nd. So we were there. So I was like, bring them to me. And he tracked them down, and I had these 12 little Wu-Tang cats come up in the office. And I was like, man, I heard your story. I was like, I lived that same DNA, coming up and doing all my stuff. I would love to sponsor you guys. So it was Remo, Marv, Tyrone. There was a whole bunch of them. Chet, I'm pulling out my ass right now. But it was a good 12 people. And, I saw them like his little brothers, you know what I mean? I think Remo was a similar age. I don't know. I think I might have 2 years on him or something, but everybody else was young. Nate, and then the 2 cats that became famous in the street riding, God rest their souls, and I can't think of their names right off the top of my head, and I have to forgive myself. But they were like legendary. They became legendary street riders, like with motorcycles, like 125s, 250s,
right,
up in Harlem. And I said, guys, I'm going to sponsor all you guys if you would like. And so I had the connection with Fox. So Fox sent clothes. We had the connection, to get the jerseys. And what I didn't say was when we were on Electra, but I told you, like, that music didn't come out, but we got paid. We produced all of it, but didn't come out. But anyway, the record label was Bulldog Entertainment.
Okay.
And so during that time period, you know, we still were in bed with Electra, but you know, I had budget I could work with through the production because you control them. We were one of the few companies that could control our budgets.
Right.
Everybody else couldn't control their budgets. We were, because I was so entrepreneurial, they trusted us, and that was very rare back. And so I had some extra money, and I said, guys, we're going to, you know, start this team, and it was called Bulldog Racing.
Mm.
And that was the beginnings of the DNA of Bulldog Bikes, but Bulldog Bikes was not there yet.
Right.
So we did this Bulldog Racing. This was like, I think we started talking to them in like 96, 97. And then it launched in like between 97 and 98. Mm-hmm. And so we had uniforms. We had 2 different uniforms. I think Remo still has some of the jerseys, but it's like blue, white, and yellow. And then there was a red, white, and yellow. It was like a pro team, expert, and then, you know, like novices, encouraging young riders.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a rent-a-van, and every weekend, you know, or every other weekend, we were hitting races. And that was the start of the extension of the Bulldog brand from all the music and music marketing we did. There's some more story to it, but I'm just trying to not make it too crazy. And then, you know, we were getting product support from Oakley and, you know, Fox. And then Remo actually had a connect with Schwinn. And then we had like a JV deal with Schwinn or whatever during that time period. And then suddenly I was volunteering, teaching entrepreneurship 1 day a week in the Bronx with foster kids. And I got hit by a cop car in a taxi.
Damn.
Yeah, and so and my girlfriend was with me at the time. And so I was out of commission, so I couldn't really do much. And Remo and the rest of the guys left to kind of, you know, it was this kind of feast or famine, and they just kind of did their own thing. And then Will, who was friends with the guys at Rough Riders, picked up a lot of those guys. And then that was that whole thing where you saw those guys in all the Rough Rider videos.
Yep.
But they were our guys. But, you know, I was severely injured and couldn't really do much for them.
And around that time, when they were riding for Rough Riders, that's when, like, you seen all the wheelies when they used to put their feet on the seat. They were on 20-inch bikes back then, though. They put the feet on the seat and they were doing the wheelies. So this was the birth of all of that.
Yeah, correct. And so, you know, but they had been hearing about Rough Riders was really trying to get up on us because they knew all the stuff that we were doing. They were doing all the wheelie stuff on Bulldog Racing with the fenders and all like that.
Right.
We had already started that. And then it was already 50% there, and then Rough Riders picked them
blew it up. Right.
And then Will, you know, because I'm always teaching entrepreneurship, he just really got in Jedi mode, which I'm proud of him, because he you know, he did some cool stuff with them. And then, you know, but he left. But that all stuff was, you know, activated and getting popular because they were all doing, you know, on the racing stuff.
Right.
But, you know, they were doing it on a grassroots level when I picked them up, you know, but it wasn't buzzing at that time, you know, and they were doing racing. That was the first wave of, you know, there was no, you know, full African-American teams during that time period. We were doing all ABA during that time period. And kind of, you know, started having people talking back then. But, you know, that fell apart. And then Rough Riders' focus wasn't really racing too much. Like they weren't supporting that, but they were kind of really supporting the guys as a street team from what I, you know, observed or whatever. Remo and them I think they continued racing a little bit. but then slowed up from that and got more into street. But that was kind of the first wave. And from that and all my experiences, right after that, there was a company that heard about what we were doing, and they were buying out all these bike companies. There was like a ton of like Mountain Cycle, Raleigh Bikes. There was like probably about 30 companies. This company called American Bicycle buying, and we knew somebody on their board, and they were like, "Yo, we love what you're doing with the program." I said, "Well, yeah, I want to, I definitely want to make bikes and stuff. And so they approached us first before the Bulldog started. And, we were going through the whole acquisition thing. And, we were going to be a part of this larger company.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't work out. There was one person that I was going to hire as a graphic designer, and they were really excited about, working with an urban BMX company.
Mm-hmm.
And that person was on the board of that foundation. And so they had been very successful, I guess. But it wasn't for graphic design, but I knew they did graphic design. They were really good. I was like, man, I got to work with this person. So I talked to them, and then they were like, I said, I don't think, the acquisition is not going to work because of funding or whatever. Like they could only, I don't know, it was some funding issue. I still want to do Bulldog. I figured out it was going to be Bulldog Bikes, and I'm just going to raise less money and then sell, a couple shares of the company, like 2 shares. And they were like, I'll give you the money for it. So we got like, I think it was like 15,000, and that got us our start. And it was crazy because it ended up that a woman close in age to me that was on the board, and but her father was a huge investment guy, and I guess she had like a trust fund or something. And she, worked. She didn't have to work, but she was a great graphic designer, and that's what she did. But she was like, "I'll cut you the check for 15," and that's how we got our start with Bulldog. And then Source Magazine, a girlfriend at the time, was calling around for advertising for us. We wanted to advertise in Source. And they called me back and they were like, "You got an urban BMX company?" I was like, "Yeah." And it's like, "Let's meet up." And I met with them. They loved what we were doing. And I told them in 2 sentences, I was like, I can bring the suburban market to you. Everybody's African-American buying Source Magazine, but, white kids in the suburbs are not, but they're buying all the music. And I'm in every suburban, town over on the weekends. I can get that magazine and all your branding in front of them every weekend. We were doing 40 events back then, like 40 events across the country,
Right.
And they were like, "Oh my God." And they gifted me their truck, which they had this Mountain Dew campaign. They had 8 of these trucks. There was only 8 in the world. And they gave me one from the fleet. We co-branded it. We went full steam. The jerseys.
That was that big pickup?
Yeah, correct.
Big Source
pickup. $100,000 pickup.
Wow.
And they gifted it to me. They really went in bed with us. And, we had the uniforms, and then we had a huge check with it.
Who at Source Magazine was like Benzino? He was the one behind it, or like who?
No, actually, it was a guy by the name of Peter Ferraro, who was vice president of marketing.
Okay.
He was like a big guy in marketing, big guy. So they hired like the best marketing people. Like they didn't play. I mean, they were doing serious numbers back then. I mean, it was a huge operation. Like it was actually number 1 in ads. I think behind Vogue. It was number 2 behind Vogue in ad sales.
Wow.
It was not a small like indie hip hop thing. It was gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were very good to us. And they opened up the checking book, and that was like the next part of the money we got was, big. And, we were able, I developed a team. I worked for all the biggest bike companies. When I was a teenager, I saw how they ran their marketing. I was with the marketing guys when I would travel, or, I'd be with the SRAM grip shift guys, traveling with them. You know what I mean? I saw how it was done.
Mm-hmm.
And I put a program together, and then we hit the road, and then, we're hitting all freestyle, all dirt, all racing. My concept of it was, because we started talking to bike shops, and they were not giving us no love. And I was looking like an alien. And so, hip hop is such a major part of my life. And being on the business side, I was interning at Rough House, and then, I ended up managing the acts. Like, I learned a lot at a young age. So I was just like, I call it the too short method.
Mm-hmm.
So when the bike shops eventually started coming around, not all of them, but I did a too short method. I remember the story of Too Short when the majors were like, they just couldn't deal with him. And so he got in the back of his back of the trunk and put his records in there and started going to all the places, hand-to-hand combat,
Mm-hmm.
and selling it himself. So what a lot of people didn't know back then is they'd be like, yeah, we don't see these bikes in the bike shop, but I was selling them out the back of the trunk at all the races, dirt jump stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When we come to town, we had the product there. We would just sell hand-to-hand combat like a independent record. So we were always making money, whether people knew it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and going to those events was key. You
Right.
know what I mean? And then we were actually, I think us and S&M were one of the first BMX brands. And then Grant Hansen had his site, BMX Extreme. We were one of the first websites, like in popular BMX culture around that early time too. And, people were jumping on the net, and then, they would email us and they say, where can I get the bike? I'd be like, I'm at the next race in Kentucky, or, I'm here or there. And that's how we were able to, really get going, and then the sponsorship game got bigger, like I leveraged all the music relationships and Source, and, the next thing you know, we always had big sponsors coming aboard, and, that was help funding the marketing, and then that turned into a whole nother business that I was able to do consulting throughout the years, which a lot of people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And, working with everybody in the business and doing consulting, event marketing, engagement marketing, getting into the market itself. It grew past, Bulldog at a certain point.
Right. And that's what transitioned into Bulldog Worldwide.
Yeah, correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Not a lot of people know about that, but yes, that's correct.
Right.
And, we did commercials, a lot of our guys, and outside our guys, we were landing commercials through other agencies. So, if you saw BMX in a lot of stuff, we were probably behind it at that time period, especially if it was an urban, like a person of color. But I mean, we work with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to, get placement for a lot of people here, throughout the years. It was, I would get a call and I'd be like, yeah, I have Cooley.
Mm-hmm.
He did a Converse commercial. And it was ones where they had the bikes in it with flags and a whole bunch of stuff. Like, it'd be all kind of different things, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of extending the business. As you know, as Bulldog grew, we got our athletes, we started discovering, like Brad, Mark Thompson. We discovered Shanaz Reed. Shanaz Reed rode for us for a long time in England.
Mm-hmm.
We established an England team. Ivo Lucas, we've had European champions, world champions. And, this wasn't getting played up in the magazines a lot.
Right.
You know what I mean? The list goes on, and then there was the phase 2 of Bulldog, where we sponsored a ton of new street riders in New York. They got established. And now the undercurrent of this, what we got to say is, our team has always been multicultural. We've had as many white kids as we've had black kids, but, because we had a platform for kids of color, people would just try and say it's one thing, but it's never been one thing. We had Todd Savecki, who was one of the best dirt jumpers out there. He beat Corey Anastasio in the high jump at Core Tour. You name it. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so many.
Right.
On phase 2 of the company, street was always kind of like something I really enjoyed. And we had originally street riders, Def Ride, Emmett Croons, with big Jinko riders in the early year. I mean, the list goes on.
Right.
No one discovered these people. We discovered them. We helped cultivate them. Like I see something in them, and they weren't. By the time they leave Bulldog, they weren't where they were at in the beginning.
Right.
When they leave, they're big time. And then they go to a bigger company, which I've always been proud about. You know what I mean? Because I was working on some bigger goals, but they weren't happening as fast as I would like. But I realized I was helping the culture. I was helping the sport. I was helping BMX. Like, we discovered Isaac Barnes, who's a huge rider in Canada that's a big asset for S&M and been with S&M for a long time. And Isaac was with us for years, but and the people weren't checking for him, and I think we've had like 4 riders over at S&M that went over, or to bigger companies. And the thing that frustrates me sometimes is, if you're in the know, but there's a lot of history, and we weren't getting propelled in the magazines to like the other companies to really share all this incredible stuff that's going on. Right. And it was just me picking these athletes out the blue. Like, the Strebe brothers wouldn't be the Strebe brothers if we didn't pick up Brian, and they got real curious about the other 2 brothers. And the next thing you know, like Adams on Redline, other boys on Standard, like anything we touch, people really start to grab. But the irony of it is that when we came in the game, it wasn't cool to be urban white kid or a black kid, and you couldn't get hit with a bus to get a sponsorship, especially if you were from the East Coast. Right. It was happening, but it wasn't happening like it happens now. And Bulldog Bulldog made it cool. Like I remember going to Core Tour, they were making fun of Corey Anastasio. They would call him a hip hop soldier. And I'm a BMX historian. A lot of people don't really realize how deep it goes. But, I saw that. And when we showed up at Core Tour in the Bulldog Sourcemobile, they didn't talk like that no more. And a lot of those guys like Raul Erickson and a ton of those guys that loved hip hop but were closet with it. And because they would get made fun of by the other kids, the other riders. And when Bulldog came around, that just stopped. Right. That just stopped. You know what I mean? And then in 2006, all the New York riders, if you weren't white, like you really, they weren't even getting love. And when we sponsored Skinny, Marlon, Oba, Brad, when we had Brad for a long time.
It's Brad Sims, y'all.
Yeah. And oh my God, Launchpad, golly dang. There's like a couple other people I can't think of that blew up. And even Nigel Sylvester, and it's funny because you would think everybody would be really supportive, but Nigel was like, he was in I don't know if he's like a year younger, but at the time I lived in Queens, and I would see this kid going down, where's Supreme's barbershop? Whatever is the main, well, I can't even think of it now. But I would see Nigel. Nigel wasn't Nigel, but Nigel, and riding down the street just all over the place. And I was like, anytime I saw, a kid on a BMX bike, like I take notice, obviously. So it ended up his buddy, Tyrell, interned for me. And he lived down the street from me, which was another ironic thing, because I lived in Manhattan so long. So he was like, yeah, I know that kid. I was like, but he was up and coming. He was up and coming at the time. He wasn't Nigel. So I basically said, well, let's give him some support. He's down the street, right? He's like, yeah. So we sponsored him with forks and bars, not a frame. And then we had finished the Bulldog DVD that got real popular. And when that came out, Animal distributed it for us. It blew up, for New York Street. With all those riders, key riders really influenced street. And then we had went on the mega tour, and they were just popping. And we had already been out for I guess 4 or 5 years or 6 years. And the next thing you know, We the People picks up Nigel, which I don't think he was ready at the time. And then everybody else got picked up by every major, company.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that happened before too, actually. And this story has never been told. When we first started, and I was living in Brooklyn with the Source deal, our first prototypes went to Edwin, Worms, Rondell, and then they actually got picked up early by one was FBM, and then Edwin got picked up. I don't know if it was Fit yet. I think whoever his first sponsor was beside us, we were the first sponsor, and then they left quickly. You know what I mean? And that was another wave, you know what I mean? Because when we sponsored them, it got, it went to Milligan, and then it went out to Cali, and they were like, yo, this guy's picking up all these guys. Now they were interested. They were never interested before.
Right.
You couldn't get hit by a bus, And, that was off our back. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They weren't checking for it before. So there's been many waves of us being the platform, so that Rough Rider thing happened, which, I really, I agree with you. It started with us, but then it became that wheelie thing, basically on the low. And then what's the kid that's blowing up right now?
So then you have, that led to D Blocks, basically.
Right. D Blocks was a young guy in that crew. He wasn't a part of the Harlem first wave, but he was a young cat, young cat that was in that bottom wave of those older guys. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And stuff. So, but he was not on Bulldog or anything. But that's the heritage coming up the line, and also to make it kind of cool. It's almost like when we slowed down and my whole kidney thing happened and we had to stop, Todd, from S&E, he was at the right time, the right place, and he's a brilliant marketer. I'm very proud of him because, he's a BMX guy to the core. And, I don't even think he knew what he had, but it organically, it's kind of I felt like where Bulldog would be if we didn't get stopped, because we were getting ready to switch to doing completes and, all kind of stuff. And, it just it was supposed to happen, but the heritage definitely is from our family tree. Right. But I'm very proud of those guys. I like everything that they're doing. And in between that as a creative entrepreneur, rider for life, I wanted to do something different. And for a long time, when I was telling you about the consulting stuff, I was working with a lot of different shoe companies.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm melding the next part of the history. So when we first started Bulldog, I got to meet the legendary team manager of Vans, which was Ev Rosecrans.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, being a little bit of a nerd, when I was younger, when I was telling you about in fourth grade, Ev was in a lot of the ads for Vans.
Mm.
He would be with his sons and the riders, and he was one of the main people that signed the skaters and all the BMX programs.
Mm-hmm.
He's really, to me, the architect of Vans' success. He laid the foundation because those riders, skaters that signed originally with him and those BMXers really made that brand to me personally. And, you know, he's even in the history of Vans, which they didn't cover fully, but he's in there, you know, and you got a Hall of Fame thing for doing all that stuff.
Mm.
So, but I was nerdy, so I liked the racing, but I was, you know, still kind of like on the business side. I was like, wow, what's he doing, you know? And then I realized he was a team manager, and then, you know, I eventually figured out what he was doing. So I'd always see him in the ads, and I always like looked up to him, you know what I mean? So by the grace of God, when we started Bulldog, I got introduced to him, and I was like, oh my God, you're Ev Rosecrans, the team manager. Like, you signed all, bop, 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 bop. You know, and I guess he took a liking to me. And so we had a deal worked out on top of the Source deal with Vans, which I don't know if a lot of people remember, but, and then we signed Jason Richardson, and Vans helped pay the salary for Richardson through our deal.
Mm.
And supplied us, you know, a great amount of sneakers. And then Ev, during certain seasons, would ask me what I was feeling. He kind of saw the urban curve coming through us with Source.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started picking out shoes. He would say, hey, what are you feeling? What do you know, whatever. And I learned a lot from that. And so then Ev left. There was a politics regime change, and he went to Vision. This is early on in Bulldog Bikes history.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Vision, and he brought me to Vision. And we were sponsored by Vision, and then, you know, I was learning stuff from him through, you know, the shoe business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, one day, you know, I got some other brands in my head. I want to do this shoe company. And I was very inspired by him. The thing is, I didn't, you know, really want to work for a shoe company because I saw like he should own the company. But anyway, long story short. So we were with Vision early on. Then we had gotten sponsored by AXO. There's two guys at AXO that were like very famous in business side of motocross and BMX. And one guy was the name Eddie Cole. Mm-hmm. And Eddie Cole has started Answer years ago and sold it. Then started AXO, sold it. And we were with AXO. He took a liking to me, and, you know, we had a really big deal with AXO. We were probably one of the few smaller companies that were getting some budget from them and clothes. You know, it was funny. Like, I would laugh at people because, you know, they had no idea, and then they were kind of ignorant because they didn't want to interview us or whatever. And I was just like, you know, I just was like, okay, you know, we're doing our thing, creating our own lane. So they sold AXO, and then we were a part of 661 with GT. It was just GT and us at the time that was still getting some budget from 661. And then, you know, we had a shoe deal with them because they were doing like firm flats basically, and, you know, clipping. And so I was learning a whole time. And the other guy who was vice president of marketing and a partner, his name was Colin Myers, we stayed friends. And he had, you know, he was amazing. Like, he worked with everybody. So motocross, skate, everything, right? So eventually, you know, we did Bulldog, whatever. And then I got sick and were hurt, or whatever you want to say. And during 2010, I had an idea for the shoe company. There we go. And I basically started it as a T-shirt thing, which you know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was Union Square. It was on a grassroots level.
Mm-hmm. That was 2010?
Yeah. It was like 2010, 2009, end of 2009.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't, that didn't officially, like the T-shirts and stuff didn't officially kick off until later on though, right?
No, wait, let me think about this. It was, I came up with the idea at my dad's house.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was missing New York. Because I was at the time, you know, my father got sick from losing his kidneys.
Mm.
And I had to move back to South Jersey temporarily, but didn't know I was eventually staying in South Jersey, right?
Right.
So I had a dream at my dad's house of Union Square. And in the dream, I saw all our riders meeting there, because that's what they used to do. Mm-hmm. All the Bulldog street riders would meet at Union Square. But, you know, and I would go over there and ride over there and meet them. But there was artists, there was skateboarders, there was, you know, the deal with Union Square.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, that's the new company. It's Union Square. So it came to me in a dream. And then I started developing the idea 2009, 2010. And I started working with my different graphic designers on developing the fonts, you know, the logo. I took my time with it. Mm-hmm. It was like, you know, I feel like with brands and everything I do, it's like I'm a chef. Mm-hmm. and it comes to me organically. So I was just kind of like, oh, that's it. It's Union Square. So then, and I think now it makes sense what you're saying. 2011, I started making the shirts. And in 2012, that's when I think we were really starting to, like, I saw you, and then we had Vic Bem in the shirt. We had, you know, a whole bunch of different people, local in South Jersey, and maybe a couple people in New York, mm-hmm. rocking the T-shirts. But it, like, at that point, it was a pet project, right? And, you know, I started working on different ideas. So in 2009, as you remember, you know, I was the MC for Afropunk.
Right.
And we had, like, you know, the featured BMX freestyle show for Afropunk with James Spooner. And, you know, we were a big part of that whole movement.
This was back when it was at BAM in the parking lot.
That's correct.
Right there on Flatbush?
Right, yeah. Right, correct. So we did that and was a big part of that. We're not a part of it anymore. Mm-hmm. But with anyway, but we did that, and, you know, it was a huge cultural thing for me because, you know, not only loving hip hop, I was also, like, you know, a Black kid that liked rock music. You know what I mean? So that was just exciting, you know, that we found, you know, we had got put together with those guys, right? But at the time period, we got sponsored by Converse. Mm-hmm. And so
Toyota too. You had the Toyota sponsorship around that time too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big deal with Toyota. Like,
right.
Big.
You had the Toyota pickups. You had a bunch of cars that you for Bulldog.
Like 3 years.
Yeah.
So at that time, we were sponsored by Converse, and Converse sent out the head designer of their skate division, he was African American, to go to Afropunk and vibe up on all, you know, everybody there. And so one of the guys from Afropunk introduced me to, his name is Mike Hobbs, the designer. And so we became friends. And so, 3 years passed. I start Union Square on a grassroots level. I got to say, key thing is grassroots. And it was just t-shirts. But I'd already started sketching the shoes that I wanted to do. And I knew a lot of people that could design, but I was just like, it's got to be the right fit. Like, it's like you, Al, like anything you do, it's excellent. You never put out halfway product. I didn't feel I met the right person. And I became friends with him, and I'm realizing, I'm like, holy crap. Mike runs the skate division. He doesn't run the skate division, but he's the head designer that does all the design. So I was like, I got to talk to him. And so we just started talking about it. And then probably like a year later, we started, really getting into it. And then a year after that, I was like, why don't you become my partner in this? I think you're amazing. You know what I mean? I wouldn't bring on a partner if they weren't amazing. Like, you shouldn't get partners if you don't need them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's but he's so amazing. I was like, I think this dude is one of the best designers I've ever seen. Like, and then it ended up, he had designed for Fila some of the top shoes for them, Timberland, some of the top shoes for them. He sold millions of shoes through his designs, but he was an employee, right? So I approached him. I said, well, how would you like to be an entrepreneur and be my partner in this and, not work for somebody, and let's do this together, And so that happened. And then we found a manufacturer, and it was just a slow process,
right?
And then when I got hurt, it was, it was basically a pet project. So we weren't in full motion at all. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So then I got hurt at Egg Harbor, and I didn't realize how bad it hurt my kidney again. So I had this all makes sense. I had 3 kidney hits. One in the beginning of BMX. The other, when I retired, it was, a lot of people don't know, when you're a marathoner, triathlete, or biathlete, when you're running and you're doing that high mileage, you're jarring your kidneys. And so I started spilling creatinine at 19 when I retired from biathlon.
Wow.
But, it wasn't bad, but they took, they said always be aware of it. Then, so I always, through 20 through 43, we were watching it, but it wasn't, wasn't anything like crazy. But this race that I did at Egg Harbor 5.5 years ago, it's like a double point, so it wasn't anything crazy. I fell and then really hurt it bad, but I didn't know. So 2 years went by, something like that. 2 years went by, and I hadn't taken a blood test. And that's how you could tell if your kidneys aren't working right. But you can never know because you're not in pain. And so I went to get a blood test finally after 2 years, and they were like, your kidneys are going out. So right around that time, we were talking about, we've been, working on the shoes, for a relaunch, technical relaunch. Because, not a lot of people had saw the Union Square stuff. So, for the first 2 years, I was kind of like, man, I can't do this. And then, I went through a rough time the first 2 years, kind of. And then I woke up one day and just was like, I'm going to launch this company. It's going to be a fresh start for me. And I won't be limited. With Bulldog, I felt, because BMX is so personality driven, like you have the FBM kids, you have the S&M kids, like Shadow Conspiracy kids, like they really drive certain personalities to them. And we had, the Bulldog fan base that was more universal white kids and, urban kids that, like hip hop, you know what I mean?
Right.
So we all had, it was all personality driven. One of the things that excited me about joining Union Square is I could do business with everybody. I could do business with Todd Lyons. I could do business with Chris Muller. I could do business with the Shadow Conspiracy Kids. Our shoes are universal. And I felt that, I had helped a lot of those other shoe companies throughout the years of crossing over and having early conversations about, one day those Afro-punk kids and everybody else will be wearing Vans because it's multicultural. I had those conversations in the early 90s because that's how I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And I marketed how I grew up. I've really made the decision because, having the kidney stuff is a terminal illness. And until you get the kidney, it's an extension of life. But I was like, you know what? I had come this far, opened up many doors, had a lot of success, I've had failure. I was just like, this sneaker company is my holy grail to spread around the world and give a great shoe. Because I always felt we did great bikes with Bulldog, but it's too outside of the box. But we always bought them, build them strong, and there was a high quality to it, and there was a lot of detail to graphics. Now it's just like I could just with the shoe company, I could just spread my wings, and we launched in December. It's doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just really just the first edition. The real stuff we're really excited about, the full launch, is in this fall with, we have all these colorways and so far, we've had some great people in the shoes. They love them. I have people buying 2 or 3 pairs. It's crazy.
Nice.
So we're excited about fall, and we did some improvements, like a lot of improvements, but we did some improvements, and and then we're learning more about our shoes every day. And it's been exciting, man. Like, but the biggest thing is like, I can work with so many different riders. It's just like me when I was in music, I work with the Prodigy to, these R&B cats, the hip hop to Craig G to, back in the days with the mod. Like, I've always been similar to you, Al, like into a lot of things, and don't put me in one box, because once you do that, it's just not. I'm not going to make sense to you.
Right. Yep.
You know what I mean? So now, it's funny. Like Todd Lyons is wearing our shoes. Some of the new SE riders are wearing it. Brad Sims was one of the first guys to get on it. He's actually, loves the shoes, and I think he's got some big stuff ahead of him too. Like right now, he's getting ready to peak. So
yeah, he's killing it right now.
Yeah, he'll go to a bigger company soon, but we'll be again a part of his history.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And the way he was wearing our shoes is just amazing. And then we sponsored the Gas Monkey Garage Supercross team.
Mm-hmm.
They wear our shoes. The list goes on now. We got a lot of stuff up our sleeves. So I'm so grateful that I took a risk, even if you would think like some people, it's like, yo, dude, you're gonna die, or like, you know what I mean? Like, you got the kidney thing going on, and I tell people crush the impossible, and just have a vision. You know what I'm saying? And I've always been a fighter, and to be honest with you, Al, I think our day is coming. I don't think we shot the load with Bulldog. I see a really great thing hatching from the shoe company.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have some other things, coming down the line, not yet.
Right.
And, I'm excited, even with all the challenges I've had to go through to get it where it's at. And, everything's coming like full circle.
That's a crazy story, first of all, like just from the beginning where you started until now. And all through that whole entire story, you know, hip hop was like the soundtrack, and not only just the soundtrack, it's a part of your life. Like you're part of that history on BMX and in hip hop with the people you work with
Yeah,
on both
and
sides. You
it
know.
and you know it's funny. One of my close friends in music business. This is how crazy it always comes back. Like sometimes I might be, occasionally I might get irritated because I was like, we don't get credit for a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, like I said, if you're in the know, you know what I mean?
Right.
But, there's been a lot of blockage in some different kind of ways, you know what I'm saying? But, even with the ASAP movement, that whole thing, which is really interesting. So one of my close friends, his name is Gino,
Hmm.
he was the manager. There was two managers, but he was the one that basically got the deal for them on the RCA record label. That the one guy I told you that we know that was at TBT,
Hmm.
he started Polo Grounds on TBT. He's my guy. Is the guy that discovered those guys, right?
Hmm.
He brought those guys to Polo Grounds and signed them. And he was a big part of that $1 million deal and managed them. So, he knew where we were deep in BMX and, one of the original undergrounds of BMX, in a different kind of way. And he linked us in with the ASAP movement early.
Hmm.
If you look on my Instagram, I was talking about ASAP, 2 years before it blew up.
Well, remember you had him. You had one of the ASAP dudes on spitting in the whip, and this was pretty early on in that whole ASAP movement.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And we ended up managing him to cross him over with hip hop and motocross. And then it's funny now, we got him started through the Connect, through my buddy. He was like, you need to mess with Jimmy because he's got all the connects. And we had got him a whole bunch of sponsors at the time and
Hmm.
whatever. It ended up my intern, who then eventually left, is now his manager, which is crazy. But anyway, that's a long story short. But the ASAP stuff, we were involved with Ty Y and eventually Ferg. So my guy Gino, eventually ASAP Rocky went with another manager, and then my guy managed ASAP Ferg. And so Ferg was going to do a Bulldog collab for a long time, and then it just never happened. And then
Mm.
I educated Ferg on BMX.
Hmm.
And then he eventually ran into Nigel and, blah, blah, blah. So the deal, we got pushed out and of the deal. He eventually went with Adidas, left the manager, and now he's like a BMX ambassador. He had the Red Line deal.
Right.
He was, but that all started from Bulldog with Ferg and Ty Y. And,
Hmm.
we deeply influenced my guy Gino, who, was preaching to them that this is the thing that you're not skateboarding. Like, you guys like BMX growing up, follow that. And
Right.
that was, and then it eventually just, they got around Nigel and then, they're around everybody else. And then they weren't with our guy anymore. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like a regime change at a record label.
Hmm.
And, it's funny, someone hit me out of the blue and they were like, because a lot of times, like, we don't get, like I said, we don't get the credit.
Hmm.
Uh, Jeff Staples has a podcast and he had Ferg on it. And Ferg gives us credit of introducing him to BMX. But that's the only way you could see it,
Mm.
And, he did that Red Line deal, but he was outside management of our relationship. So he took all that stuff and he just ran with it. There's nothing I could do,
Right.
And then during this time period, I think I was 6 still. So I was just kind of like, I couldn't do too much. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So, and he didn't want to spend the money. I think like we were going to do some custom bikes if he wanted to do the money, but he didn't want to put up his bread. And, I would design it for him and, but it wouldn't be a Bulldog. It would be whatever he wanted.
Hmm.
And, but anyway, that's a whole that's a whole nother thing. We were like, I mean, you were in the outskirts of that. So, I mean, You
Right.
know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, and it goes on. But you know, I mean, I've done well financially throughout the years with a mixture of everything. But you know, some of those cultural vultures, uh, you know, definitely, you know, you can't have everything. You know what I mean? And you can't, you know, get all the fish in the world. You know what I mean? But I do feel sometimes like, you know, it's just not, you know, it wasn't kosher sometimes. You know,
Right. Right. Yeah.
you know, and they just don't want to give the credit. But you know, I'll say it right now. I'm the godfather of that. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't give what they say, you know, or don't try and say, because you know, it's like I believe in each one teach one, the community. If I share bread with you, we can all make money together. But that's been my dream, especially on the urban side of this.
Hmm.
But everybody is acting like crabs in a barrel sometimes, and you know, I don't really like that. But you know, because I think there's money for everybody, and you know, you protect your pricing. Like the other thing is, like people come in and underprice it. If I charge Toyota something, they come in for 20 grand when they could be making it, you know, 400,000.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So, and then I'm trying to tell people that. You know, Nigel knows that now because he's just been in it a long time, and he's definitely got his cheddar right. But you know, before they were, you know, people were undercutting. You know, just like it was terrible. I'm the only one trying to be like, hey, you know, you know, we could do this better and that better, you know, whatever.
Hmm.
And but you know, it's in time. You know, a lot of these guys have gotten older, and most of them have come back to me and apologized or said, hey man, I didn't realize that you were really trying to really help us, and no one else. I had other sponsors, they didn't do what you did. You know, it's happened over 20 years, so I've gotten it back. But it would have been nice at the time that it would have been grateful or appreciated a lot more.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? The suburban kids, they were always very grateful. You know
Mm.
what I mean? That, you know, I wanted everybody to be grateful. You know what I mean? Nobody's ever had to kiss my ass. You know, I've never been that guy.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But, you know, you know, it's interesting, man. It's just, but it's my life, you know, and I love art, graphics, BMX, skateboarding, you know, anything action sports. And that's like I said, you know, that's why I'm so excited to do this shoe company.
Right.
There'll be something in the future. We'll probably do complete, cheaper complete with Bulldog in the near, maybe next 4 years or something like that.
Hmm.
But you know, but like I said, I have some other things in my head. But you know, the flagship is going to be the shoe company because it just really makes us, you know, be able to work with the world. You know.
Yeah, that's what's up. That's what's up. So, a lot of people out there need to hear, your story. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
there's a lot of history in what you've been involved with. You know, you've been involved with a lot of things throughout a lot of years, and
Right.
to get that documented is important. Um,
Yeah, I thank you for that opportunity. And, you know, I've always said, you know, everything that you've done, I've always been excited about and try to be the best supporter for because you've been an amazing platform. And I know you've actually gone through some of the yin and yang,
oh, of
you
course.
know, of being a great platform, you know, but anyway, but you're doing a great job. And I thank you for you know, giving me this platform, always giving me this platform over the 20. It's been like 20 years, right?
Yeah, 20 something years. Yeah, time goes by fast.
It does.
Man.
It's been a hell of a journey so far, but I look at this as half the journey. Now is the next half.
Right.
You know, that's what I'm excited about. Everything else has been a foundation, but I really feel like when people really want to talk, it's going to be what we're doing right now and to the future.
And I wish the best for you, man. You know, Union Square, the sneakers look amazing. And I think it's gonna be it's gonna be big, man, most definitely. So this is the first of many episodes of this thing I'm starting now, and it was an honor to have Jimmy Mack as my first guest because, like we've been saying through the whole thing, is that he's very intricate in this whole BMX and hip hop lineage. And I'm hoping to get some more guests on, some legends, some people who you may not even think were actually into BMX in the future. So I'm gonna be doing a lot more of these episodes and talking to a lot of people that have hip hop and BMX in their DNA. You know what I mean? So before we get finished, Jimmy Mack, let everybody know how they can check you out, what's going on with the social media.
Oh yeah, you can reach us at Union Square Co. on IG.
Mm-hmm.
You can reach me personally at BDG Industries on IG. And also, if you want any product for the shoes and apparel, it's unionsquareshoes.com. Go to store, click store, and we still have some limited edition left. We have some new tees that are coming up this week, and then we'll be dropping a pre-sale in a few weeks for the fall line, so you can get them before they sell out. And I promise you, you're going to really like the second collection that we're doing, whether you're a skater, BMXer, a free ride. They're super grippy, nice firm sole, but still has a little flex.
Mm-hmm.
And just to let you know, too, we have, for spring next year, we have SPDs coming out, and we also have a stiff pair of super free ride shoes that, that a lot of riders like, but that won't be out till next spring. But yeah, man. So check that out, and it's all good. Thank you, Al.
Yeah, man, definitely. So this is the first BMX HipHop Chronicles. That's how I call it. Yeah, BMX HipHop Chronicles. It's the first episode. Jimmy Mack, man, thank you so much for being on the show, man. So with that being said, as a tradition that we always do on every show, you gotta do me that favor, man. You gotta say back to you, Billy.
Back to you, Billy.
1.
Yeah.